very good evening to you and welcome to Africa Speaks, live on Pan-African television. I am your host, Rashida Abubakar. Across Africa, ordinary people continue to demand dignity, peace, and the right to determine their own future. But in many places, those demands are being met with arrest, violence, and a growing political tension. Tonight, we examine developments in Tanzania and Sudan, discuss the M23 conflict in Congo with Comrade Kambali, hear voices from DR Congo, visit major political developments in Burkina Faso, reflect on the impact of flooding across the continent, and remember the Swaziland uprising. Stay with us, there's a lot more. Let's begin with our Spotlight segment with Daniel Otu Asante. Tanzania is once again under the international spotlight as political tensions continue to rise ahead of the anniversary of the country's conflicted elections. For many Tanzanians, however, the concerns goes beyond politics. It is about freedom to organize and speak openly and to participate in shaping the country's future without fear. Across Africa, democracy is measured not only by elections, but by whether citizens are free to express different opinions and hold leaders accountable.
Welcome to the Spotlight segment. As always, a Spotlight segment takes a closer look at the issues behind the headlines. Today, we examine two unfolding situations and what they say about Africa's political and social landscape. Our first story is from Tanzania, which saw massive police deployment to crack down on possible protest. Authorities have banned political rallies and arrested dozens of activists and youth organizers ahead of planned demonstrations calling for democratic reforms and the release of opposition figures. The situation in Tanzania today directly stems from last year's election in October, which was marked by controversy and violence. President Samia Suluhu Hassan's government did not conduct a free and fair election, jailing opposition candidates, preventing opposition parties from functioning, and shutting down the internet. President Samia Hassan won the election with over 97% of the vote, which was widely disputed. The aftermath of the elections saw protests in major cities and violent crackdown by the government. Some reports indicate up to 1,000 people killed in the repression. The latest round of deployment reveals a government that is still cut from the people, one that views the exercise of democratic right with suspicion. There are larger questions here. The ruling party CCM was founded by Pan-African hero Julius Nyerere, who envisioned the socialism unique to the continent. However, over the decades, the party has failed to continue on this path. The opposition too has not provided any different alternatives. This kind of crisis leads to political and ideological decline. The people lose hope in their leaders and political parties. They erupt when their rights are trampled. But genuine change seems distant. For ruling parties, the recent event in Tanzania are a clear indicator that the power alone is not enough. They must present a project to workers, students, and ordinary citizens who have consistently demanded accountable governance, economic justice, and meaningful participation in politics. For Pan-Africanists and progressive movements, Tanzania's situation proves the need for deepening democracy beyond elections. The Farmers' Organization in Witawa in Tanzania has offered a new model of democracy closely connected to production and day-to-day lives. Several other experiments are being carried in Tanzania and across the continent to build people's power in every aspect of life. Tanzania's story is not just about protests and crackdown, it is a call for a new model of organizing society itself.
Meanwhile, Sudan continues to face one of Africa's worst humanitarian crises. Experts are warning of the growing violence around the city of El Obeid, where fears are mounting that civilians could once again become a victim of armed conflicts. Months of fighting have already displaced millions, destroyed livelihoods, and left communities struggling for access of food, water, and medical care. For people caught in conflict, survival has become a daily battle.
Our second spotlight story takes us to Sudan, where alarm is mounting over the deteriorating security situation in El Obeid, another African city standing at the edge of catastrophe. In this city, the capital of North Kordofan State, United Nations officials and humanitarian agencies are warning of another massacre as fighting intensifies between the Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Force, or the RSF. More than 500,000 civilians are believed to be at risk, with thousands already fleeing renewed violence, while drone strikes continue to hit civilian infrastructure and essential services. Experts have warned that the situation in El Obeid could be similar to that of El Fasher in the North Darfur, which fell in the RSF last year, leading to a massacre of thousands and human rights violence. In El Obeid, hospitals, schools, water systems, and market have become casualties of war. Families had already escaped violence elsewhere now find themselves displaced yet again, with children facing hunger, disease, and the trauma of repeated conflict. The war in Sudan has been going for over 3 years. The warning cites the army and the RSF were once allies who had suppressed the people's movement demanding democracy. For years, People's Movement had warned that the generals on both sides could not be trusted. They had demanded the removal of the generals, a true civilian democracy, and stripping the army and the RSF of their economic resources. But the international community continued to see the generals as a way forward to achieving peace. Today, tens of thousands have been killed and millions displaced. The support by the international community for the generals continue. Sudan has become a battlefield for countries such as UAE, Saudi Arabia, Egypt to play out their rivalry. The war can stop today if the backers of the generals face the right kind of pressure. Yet, from El Fasher and El Obeid, we see killings, destructions of homes, hospitals, water resources and farms, and the displacement of an entire population. For now, there must be an immediate ceasefire and unrestricted humanitarian assistance. But the war must stop. This has to be the call from Africa. That concludes this edition of our Spotlight segment. We hope the stories continue to inspire meaningful conversations about the future of our continent. The rest of the show continues with Rashida. Over to you.
For this week on Expert Speaks, we are focusing on the crisis happening in DR Congo. To better understand the latest developments, we are joined by Comrade Kambali. The recent operations by the M23 rebels have renewed concerns about regional stability and the future of peace in Eastern Congo. Who is driving the conflict? Who stands to benefit? And what role should African governments and regional institutions play to finding lasting solutions? These are some of the questions we put to our guests. Let's take a look. Today, we are discussing a very, very important topic. That is the crisis happening currently in DR Congo. Yes, and to help me analyze the issue at hand is Comrade Kambali Musavuli. I hope I got the name right. And he is an analyst with the Center for Research on Congo, Kinshasa. Comrade, you're welcome to Africa Speaks.
Thank you for having me.
We know there has been a lot happening in Congo. First of all, with regards to the war, can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's a very tricky discussion to have, right? Because if I start talking about the war to your viewers, all they will know about the Congo is the war.
Yeah.
Right? So we are here in Ghana. I found out that there is a huge connection between Congo and Ghana. How so? 1958. Patrice Lumumba came here. Why did he come to Ghana? Kwame Nkrumah invited him for the All-African People's Conference. And that was the beginning of strengthening the ties between Ghana and DRC, whereby the people of the Congo, as we gained independence in 1960, we cannot say it was a national affair. It was a Pan-African affair because there were many people sent by Kwame Nkrumah and Sékou Touré to support the independence movement of the Congo. We know Congolese music, right? We know also we went to the World Cup. So there is a whole discussion on Congo being represented at the World Cup. So people have a connection with the Congo. They know the music, they know the people. They know also there is a war that has taken the lives of ordinary people. But what they don't know is I'm a victim of that war. In 1996, a war started in the DRC that has taken the lives of 6 million people. At least 6 million people. You know, when we found out that 6 million people died, we found out the statistic in around 2009 and 10. There is a statistic done by the International Rescue Committee that says that from 1998 to 2007, 5.4 million Congolese have died due to the conflict. And half of the deaths are children under the age of 5. Think about a 5-year-old. We're talking about 2 million children erased from the planet. What have they died? All of us have cell phones, right? We have electronic devices. There have been an exploitation of Congo's resources. Mineral resources such as coltan are found in every cell phone, laptop, TVs, the lithium that's needed for AI machines, right? These data centers, the electric cars. So the mineral resources of the Congo have been powering the fourth industrial revolution. And unfortunately, the Congolese people have been affected by it. So then who's killing the Congolese? Are they being killed by minerals? No. There is actually a war waged by US and British allies, Rwanda and Uganda, 2 of Congo's neighbors, funded by the United States, funded by the United Kingdom, who have invaded the Congo twice in 96 and 98, and they continue to support proxy rebel militias. And these militias, in the 90s, they were called AFDL. In the 2000s, they were called RCD. And now they are called the M23. But they are the same rebels.
Well, we know that recently DR Congo had their Independence Day. Yes. And also they had an anniversary with one of the great leaders, that is Patrice Lumumba. But the crises are still happening in DR Congo. Recently there was a ceasefire. What does this mean on the ground?
So when you're speaking about the ceasefire, you're talking about the conflict that most mainstream media will talk about as the M23 rebels causing chaos in Congo and signing peace accord. When you come from that perspective, you actually are not seeing the hands behind the M23. The M23 is a proxy militia group backed by Rwanda. Rwanda's Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, has his hands in it, including Yoweri Museveni of Uganda. So if we discuss the M23 and the ceasefire, we miss the point that there is actually a hand behind. So who sees Paul Kagame sees the United States, sees the United Kingdom. So what is the interest in DRC? Their interest is to take control of the land, take control of the resources. So while the killings are taking place, the minerals are still living. And people are being dispossessed of the land, right? But the minerals are not staying in Kigali, right? They're finding its way out in the Western world. So when they're signing a peace accord with these rebels, right? They say that there is a ceasefire and then it doesn't hold. For us Congolese, it's normal that it doesn't hold because you're not dealing with actually who is behind the M23. So if we do not deal with the question that the fundamental problem of the conflict is that Congo's territorial integrity is being violated. There is an attempt to carve up the Congo into small states. There is it's no longer a myth. It's even being written in UN reports now, right? That Rwandan President Paul Kagame believes that the eastern part of DRC should be a land that he controls and actually carve it up completely. If we allow that to happen, can you imagine Fonya Simbe waking up tomorrow and say, a part of Ghana is part of Togo, now we are going to take it away. And there is a fundamental decision that was taken at the AU, right? At the Organization of African Unity, even in 1963. Now we call AU, around the respect for the current borders of the continent. We know these borders are artificial, right? Because we have people from the same tribes across the borders. So these borders don't mean much. But the founding fathers of the African continent, of the AU, When they sat down in AU and they included in the AU Charter that the borders, right, of African countries should remain intact. There should be territorial integrity. They did that because they knew the moment we start now fighting over borders, we will never unite, right? So it'll make it even harder for us to achieve the Pan-Africanism of the people. So what they stated is, for the time being, let's leave these borders as they are while we create more integration and we build for a stronger African continent, because our hope is one day for any African in any place could move from places to places, live peacefully, so that we don't keep fighting on these artificial borders. Unfortunately, Rwanda and Uganda, who are members of the AU, are not listening to, are not even implementing the AU Charter, right? They're invading another African country. So it's a larger question for Africans to speak out around what is happening. You know how long this war has been going on?
No.
We're in 2026.
Yeah.
I said that the war started in 1996.
Yes.
That's 30 years, right? 30 years that the people of the Congo have not known peace. I think that it's time for Africans to look at the situation in the Congo as an impediment to Pan-Africanism. That if we don't solve the crisis in the Congo today, Africa can never unite. And we must do everything in our power to end the carnage, hold those who are causing the conflict accountable, and make sure that in 2027 we are not again talking about the M23 or war in the DRC.
Yeah. Comrade, you mentioned that a lot of people have been affected.
Yes.
Have there been any form of justice for survivors in the war?
At the moment, we have not achieved justice. In 2010, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights published a report called the UN Mapping Exercise Report. This report says that what's happening in the Congo are war crimes, crimes against humanity, and possible genocide if proven in a competent court. The report documented 617 allegations of human rights violation and international humanitarian law violation, right? So what does that mean? I'm throwing all these big words, right? In a village, they kill 15 people. Yes, it's a crime, but it's not a massive crime. But 100 people are buried alive, then that's a crime that they documented. So they only look at the most serious and grave crimes that took place and documented that. It was published in 2010. We are in 2026. Up until today, the recommendation of the UN Exercise Report has not been enforced. One of them that the Congolese people have been calling for is there should be an international tribunal for DRC for the crimes taking place there. Why should we have an international tribunal? It's because an international tribunal creates a mechanism for extradition. Why is it important for DRC? Many people who committed crimes in Congo are not Congolese. So in order to try them, not in absentia, we have to have an international jurisdiction so that other countries can send them to Congo to face trial in DRC. That's one. Second, the Congolese have called for an international tribunal on Congo to be actually placed in DRC so that the victims can go to court, see the perpetrators, and see how they can get justice there. They don't want a court that's outside of the Congo. So we keep at the Center for Research on the Congo, Kinshasa, pushing for that. Many organizations in DRC continue to push for that. And lately, I think almost a month now, the DRC has gone back to the International Court of Justice to open another case, a new case against Rwanda for continuing to support rebel groups in DRC. So we'll see what the ICJ will say. I think that we're in a new era where we saw how South Africa took Israel to the ICJ and they won the case, showing that there is genocide taking place in Palestine. And the Congolese lawyers and Congolese organizations supporting this process, they believe that it is much easier to bring a case today than before, given what we know about what's happening in Gaza to the people of Palestine.
Okay. Multiple tracks of negotiations have happened that involves the US
Yes,
and Qatar. Could you tell us what is happening on the forefront?
It is said that on the African continent, most people missed what happened on December 4th, 2025, last year in December. On December 4th, 2025, in Washington, D.C., the United States organized a signing of peace agreement and bilateral negotiations. Most people know about the peace accord, where the Rwandan president and Congolese president signed in front of Donald Trump a peace accord. But there were two agreements also signed. Those were economic agreements, right? According to one of the envoys of President Tshisekedi, a letter that he had sent to Trump last year, that in that letter, he indicated that Congo is willing to put $3 trillion worth of minerals on the table if the U.S. supports Congo in bringing peace and stability. The premise that they used was that given that Rwanda is a very strong U.S. ally, the U.S. can rent them in. That process has nothing to do with the Congolese people. The Congolese people did not ask Tshisekedi to go to Washington and sign a peace deal and give our minerals to the United States. He did that mostly to protect his power because his power was threatened with the rebellion, and he was put into a corner where he felt that he should go to the United States. And it's strange for us who have been advocating for peace in Congo that we've never advocated for peace where we never mention the United States and the United Kingdom, right? Because we know that Rwanda doesn't make weapons. We know that they don't have anti-drone missiles in some of their shops. These are weapons sent from outside, mostly Europe and the United States and the United Kingdom. So there's the military power that Rwanda has, which it uses to support the rebels in Congo, comes from this nation. So a nation such as the United States that has been at the forefront of destabilizing the Congo, not just now, but also participated in the assassination of our first elected prime minister, Patrice Lumumba, is today being presented as the country bringing peace and stability. Right? That's one way to look at it. But the other one is to actually look at this accord signed in Washington as the New Berlin Conference. Why am I saying this? At the Berlin Conference, European nations sat down not just to carve up the African continent. They actually sat down to find out what is going to happen to the Congo and who's going to control it. They decided to take Congo and give it to King Leopold II of Belgium as his personal property. And while King Leopold had control of the Congo, Congo's resources were leaving the DRC. The latex, how you call it, rubber, right? Rubber left the Congo for the automobile industry at the time. The same thing now is happening. But Africans don't know that the second Berlin Conference just took place in Congo. In this accord, they created a mechanism of having 10 people, 5 Americans and 5 Congolese, to list the minerals that we have, right? And to decide how these minerals will be exploited. And even much more insidious, they have made the Congo sign an agreement where we cannot sell our minerals to anyone around the world before selling it to the Americans. So if today we want to give our copper to China, we discover some copper deposit somewhere, we cannot give it to China. We cannot give it to even any African country, right? Yeah. The first person who has to actually buy that mineral is the United States. And if the United States does not want it, then we can sell it to anyone else. Now, legally, this can happen, right? According to our Congolese constitution. But because it cannot happen according to Congolese constitution, since they signed the accord, Tshisekedi, who's the current president of the Congo, and his parliament, they have been busy changing our constitution to make the illegal deal legal, where they're changing the money code of the Congo to be able to abide by what is in the agreement that they signed. And they are able to do that because the parliament of the Congo is vastly controlled by Tshisekedi's party. And outside of that, there are also discussion of him changing presidential term to stay longer. But as you see, now I'm talking about the Congolese internal problem and the challenge that we have, right? I spoke about Rwanda and Uganda, but now the internal problem. Where do the people sit in this country? So it's very important as people want to understand the Congo and the challenge that they face to understand what Kwame Nkrumah said in Challenge of the Congo. Congo's challenges are both internal and external. So it requires an external strategy for people to be in support of the Congolese, an internal strategy for us in the Congo to be able to deal with our national bourgeoisie and hold them accountable. What does that concretely mean? There are forces against the Congo who are in Accra. There are forces against the Congo who are in Maputo. There are forces against the Congo who are in London, in Paris, and also in the United States. So those who want to align and support the Congolese liberation struggle should put pressure on the negative forces. What did I say Accra? It's because of Anglo Gold Ashanti, right? Anglo Gold Ashanti has been named in numerous UN reports of the exploitation that they are doing in the Congo and even working with rebel groups in the DRC. They're not being held accountable on the African continent, so they can be held accountable. We know what the United States and United Kingdom are doing. They are mining companies. So while Africans are going to make the Congo movement as important as the first South Africa movement was yesterday, to make sure that in the schools, as we are talking about Patrice Lumumba, as we're talking about the people of the Congo with their culture and who they are for the African continent, we remind the world that the liberation of the Congo is so important that Western world will not leave the Congo alone until they control it fully. So it's up to us to challenge the status quo wherever we are, to remind people Congolese are fighting. They're fighting the national bourgeoisie. They're fighting the rebels. But then what about the negative forces outside? That's where we need the world support for people to put pressure on the right forces while we continue the liberation struggle inside of the DRC.
Well, let's talk about the upcoming elections that is scheduled to happen in DRC Congo. We know that, well, there's a rumor going around that the president is scheduled to go for another term. How are the people in Congo reacting to that?
First, we have to look at the question of governance in Africa from our perspective. There are many people who can debate around the exercise of going to elections every 4 years, right? People have reasons to believe that we have to rethink how we govern, right? But now, in the case of the Congo, it's very important to understand why Tshisekedi is trying to change the constitution. He did not win the 2018 elections. It is now a known fact that there was a secret deal signed between Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, Tshisekedi, and Kabila. It's now in the public forum. You can find the information that the 2018 elections that declared Tshisekedi the winner of the election, that was a rigged election that announced it because of the deal. So since 2018, he's been ruling a country without the mandate of the people, right? Congo has 2 presidential terms according to the constitution. 5-year term, twice, and then it's done. His predecessor, Kabila, wanted to change the constitution. And he had 2 presidential terms, and he tried the same thing. Hundreds of thousands of Congolese, inside and outside, organized and mobilized against it. And we had Congolese who died, right? Thérèse Kapangala, she died during a protest against Kabila. Rossi Chimanga, he died during a protest. I can name many young Congolese who organized themselves to stop Kabila for changing the constitution and pretty much forced him to organize an election that brought Tshisekedi to power. Of course, the deal, we know what has happened. Now, coming from that experience, today Tshisekedi wants to do the same. For what is he exactly doing? It's not a rumor. It's actually happening as we speak. Right? They are pushing for a referendum, right? And the referendum is to change the Congo constitution so that we remove presidential term, but we extend the presidential term to 7 years, meaning that the next election will be the first time that Tshisekedi will be running under the new constitution. So the 10 years will have passed, will be forgotten, and then go into the next one. But I am so confident that the people of the Congo are not going to allow that. They've been in the streets, they've been protesting. This coming week, there are protests that's going to take place. Few weeks before, there were protests. Congolese people are not, the issue is not around presidential term. The issue is the respect of the will of the Congolese people. If I go to the poll and I vote, I want the result to reflect actually what I voted. When it doesn't, then there is mistrust in the democratic institutions of the country. So the Congolese are relentless. They are not going to stop fighting until Congo is free. They are challenging the status quo. And they know that we have numerous challenges from east to west, internally and externally. But Patrice Lumumba told us that we have to continue this fight to liberate the Congo. And he also gave a prophecy that we are not alone. Africa, Asia, and a free and liberated people will always be found at the side of the Congolese. And my hope is that our discussion will have more and more African people and other free and liberated people around the world join us as we continue to fight for liberation in DRC.
Well, there has been a lot of crisis happening in DR Congo, and we can't rule out the healthcare system now. Ebola has been a major challenge to DRC Congo. What is the situation on the ground, and how do you think the governments should solve such problems in the country?
At the present time, we have over 500 people who have contracted Ebola as a case. I also know that this is not the first time Congo has had Ebola, right? Yeah. We've had 17 epidemic, right? So the Congolese doctors and Congolese nurses are very familiar with how to address the Ebola crisis. So you have to match the urgency of the crisis, but also not fall into the trap of the Western world making it into another COVID moment, where we forgetting that it's a disease that can be dealt with, right? So that's what we're hearing for frontline health workers, that yes, the epidemic is there, but we have dealt with Ebola 17 times. We know how to treat it. And as you know, people are actually healing from Ebola, right? But how are they healing? Because of the cocktail medicine that the doctors and the nurses, the care that the Congolese doctors and nurses are giving to the patient. So that's one aspect. It should be actually, it does have some challenges. The number one challenge is that the outbreak is taking place in areas where the rebels have taken control. So it's making it hard for coordination. And two, that the doctors, the government has not been adequately addressing coordination because of where they are in the capital city. But who I've seen have been stellar. Have been the doctors. They've been using technological tools such as DHIS2 to collect information. We are in communication with them actually on a weekly basis about the needs, right? There are very basic needs about gloves and masks and additional technical equipment. And not only that, we have a group of African technologists, right? The Africa Emergency Technology Response Forum. These are a group of African technologists who are giving their time to support the Ebola response, working directly with some of the centers on the ground. What I hope will happen is more coordination with actually those who are on the front lines. That the government listens more to the doctors who are dealing with the crisis on the ground, and for Africans to not wait for Western donors to start addressing the situation. I was very happy last week when I returned to Accra to see that there is a response to the Ebola outbreak at the airport here in Accra. Right? There is a whole protocol taking place. This type of initiatives reminds me that we Africans, we can address it. It's a disease. We know the virus is complicated when someone contracts it and you find that late. But when you have it, you can be healed. Let's listen to the doctors on the front line. Let's listen also to the nurses on the front line dealing with the issues rather than listening to Western donors and others on how to address the Ebola outbreak.
Finally, comrade,
Yes.
with all this happening in Congo, the crisis, I mean, we have had a vivid analysis of what the current situation is in Congo. What do you think the people are responding to or are thinking now? And what is the way forward for all of us, not only people in Congo, I mean the whole African continent? What is the way forward?
The people of the Congo are some of the most amazing people in the world. I was worried about the World Cup. I was worried about the World Cup because Congo went to the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I saw what the government of Congo was doing for PR, how they were trying to steal the joy from the people and use it for political gains. But something amazing happened during the World Cup. The World Cup happened in the United States. Our players went there. I saw thousands and thousands of Congolese united around football. But the unity was not about the game. And you could listen to the players, right, whenever they were interviewed, that each player who was interviewed about the game never forgot to mention the situation in the eastern part of Congo, right? That tells you the spirit in which the people of the Congo participated in the World Cup. They didn't participate to win the World Cup. They participated to show the world who we are. This is why we have a fan who dresses as Lumumba and stands for the whole game, right? As Lumumba. Imagine that you had a game and you sing the symbol of Lumumba. So the Congolese people, the spirit of them, the ordinary Congolese, want to live free, with dignity, free of war, free of oppression. And they know that this is our mission. It's a long-term mission, but it's our mission to liberate the country. And every day they take a step toward that. What they wish for, but particularly for the African continent, is for Africans to know this is happening, right? I shared with you a statistic saying that from 1998 to 2007, 5.4 million people died. 2007 to now, it's almost 20 years, right? Past. Which means that the 6 million I'm mentioning is not actually how many millions have died. It could go to 10 million. It could go to 20 million. What I always say is we will never know the millions of Congolese who have died in this conflict because for 30 years, we all have been sleeping.
Yeah.
So for the African continent, for Africans in particular, as they find out about the Congo, they should know that Congo is part of them. Congo is in your cell phone. Congo is in your TV. Congo is in your AI machine that when you are trying to prompt and get some information. Congo is in your music. Congo is in your culture. That the Congo that is in you for the past 30 years has not known peace. Just as we fought to liberate South Africa, we must do everything in our power to liberate the Congo. It is not by accident that Kwame Nkrumah wrote a book about the Congo, Challenge of the Congo. It's not by accident that he got Patrice Lumumba to come here, because he knew that the liberation of the Congo is very critical and essential for the liberation of the African continent. He's planned for a United States of Africa. And guess where the capital was? Kinshasa. Put it in the book. Said, if you want the United States of Africa, the capital city will be there, because he knew that the resources of the Congo can power the African continent, and that population of 120 million people, half of them under the age of 18, we're talking about over 60 million young people. That's almost twice the population of Ghana, right? And Congo, by size, is 10 times the size of Ghana, right? So imagine that power, if it's free and liberated with the resources that it has, what it could do to the African continent. That's the message for the Africans, that they must pay more attention about the Congo. They must support the liberation struggle in the DRC, and in their own way in the community, make sure that Congo is part of your discussion. Make sure that people know this is happening, because you will never know. A Congolese may be in your community, or those who are oppressing Congolese may be in your community. So bring Congo inside your activism, your engagement, your life, because Congo is already part of your life, but you do not know. And we must do everything in our power to end the conflict in the Congo.
On this African Must Unite note, Comrade Kambali, thank you very much for sharing this insightful and educative analysis with us. Well, I hope you enjoyed our little conversation we had on the crisis of DR Congo. Yes, this is the Expert Speaks segment on Pan-African Television with me, Rashida Abubakar. I'll see you same time next week. Bye for now. You are still watching Africa Speaks on Pan-Africa Television. In Voices on the Ground, we stay on DR Congo. Despite its vast natural wealth, millions of Congolese continue to live under the shadows of conflict. Communities are being forced from their homes, families separated, and countless lives disrupted by years of violence involving armed groups. Yet, beyond the headlines are ordinary people calling for peace, security, and the opportunity to rebuild their lives. Today, we hear directly from those living through the crisis.
Congo was the private property of King Leopold. It wasn't a colony of Belgium. Until his death, I think it became a colony around, if my memory serves me right, around 1906 or something along those lines. And during the time where it was a private property of King Leopold, about half of the population of Congo was wiped out. And that was the first Genocost. And the reason why they were wiped out wasn't because of tribal war, it wasn't because of ethnic conflict, it was because it was a systemic, brutal exploitation of the Congo at the cost of Congolese life. Congolese life was seen as disposable for the exploitation of rubber, for the exploitation of ivory, for the exploitation of gold. Those were the things that made King Leopold very wealthy, that helped him build Belgium and become an important king. So 100 years on, the same thing is happening in Congo. And this time, the number is not 10 million, it's over 6 million since 2008. We are now in 2026. People don't count the dead in Congo anymore. We don't know exactly how many Congolese have passed away, but what we do know is that the media has often portrayed it as ethnic tension, tribal conflict, and so forth. Anything to distance European from it. You are told that the person that persecuted you the most is actually your hero. Is called Uncle, the builder of Congo. That's the image of King Leopold that was sold to us in our curriculum, not the one who chopped off the hands of young Congolese kids when their parents didn't meet quota, but instead is the one that built school and brought Christianity and so forth, a benevolent king that helped build the country and infrastructure, not one that plummeted the country, absolutely looted everything at the cost of half of our population. That is a story that I had to discover independently while working in the UK, because that is not taught to this day in the Congolese curriculum. Now, there are more and more people trying to work toward changing that because as a result of our campaign, but that is a mistake that we don't want to happen to the next generation. And hence why we thought, all right, if there is one thing that we can do at the moment with the little means that we have, what is it? We thought, okay, let's start a commemoration day. Let's mark a date where we'll call everybody to sit down, stop, and take a moment to think about what is happening in Congo, to give solution and to ask for justice for what is happening in Congo. It was very symbolic. It was not something that costed much, but it was something that spoke volume and that made a call to Congolese and friends of the Congo and anyone across the world, because we all benefit from this Genocost in Congo today. If we're talking about the phones or the laptop that we're using to have this very conversation that we have, without the blood of Congolese people, that would not be possible. When you talk about AI, when we talk about advancing drone, when we're talking about space, every single plan that we talk about future technological advance in the digital world, that cannot be done without the blood of Congolese people. And it doesn't have to be that way. On the ground, the community are doing what they can to survive. They've always been very resilient, the Congolese people, and they're doing what they can, but they really need support, especially with the Ebola crisis at the moment, because this crisis coming is not just affecting the occupied territory, but it's also affecting some parts like such as Ituri and so forth. And yes, we're seeing kind of a global coordination in the region to try to control it before it goes out, because we saw what happened last time when it happened, and there was in Eastern Africa, and so many countries were exposed to it. The advantage is that in the region in Congo, there's lots of expertise in terms of Ebola, because that's where the virus first broke out, and we've had many outbreaks. So there is local expertise, but again, with restriction of the access to the airport of Goma, for example. So when humanitarian experts or aid need to come, they have to go to neighboring countries. We've seen countries closing their borders, but now starting to reopen it. But is it a case of it being reopened because of the fact that it's now safer, or is it a case of reopening it because simply of the fact that some of those countries are in desperate need to extract resources from the Congo because their economies are based on it, and they can't afford to have the border being shut for so long, because that means that there'll be a shortage in mineral. So it's a bit of, you have to kind of try to read between the line and understand the nuances of what is happening. But definitely there is more that needs to be done in the Ebola outbreak. What I find quite sad is the fact that I feel like there is not really a great sense of urgency, and it looks like people have not drawn much lesson from COVID in terms of the fact that we live in a world where you can't just let such a dangerous epidemic go around and check thinking it's not going to affect you because you're in Europe or you're in America or you're so far from it, it's just going to stay in Africa. You know, those days are gone. Today, people can move quite quickly around the world, and really a lot need to be done to help the communities out there. Some of the people that have committed atrocity for the last few years that are involved, some of the actors of this war, need to be one day be held accountable. And when that would happen, that's when we can expect some peace and stability for Congo and also for the Great Lake region. And that is part of the work that we do. And this year, on the 2nd of August, we really asking for solidarity from all of our supporters across Africa and across the world, all the friends of the Congo, to at least display a gesture online. You know, we show a candle of hope on the 2nd of August in memory of DR Congo. We do have a profile banner that we're putting online, an online campaign where people can kind of put it, profile to say we will not forget, we remember them. And that's what we do, because we think that, a small gesture like that, the small display can lead to a big change. But it's a case of if everybody can do the little bit they can, then, we all moving forward, and we all kind of bring our stone to the house.
We are in the city of Bunia in the province of Ituri. Behind me you have the Ebola treatment center of CME, a Centre Médical Évangélique, one of the centers which are receiving a person who people who are suffering from this disease of Ebola. Until now, the situation is still difficult, because there is a number of people which are still getting inside, and people are trying their best to survive with this situation. Another thing is that with the capacity of building laboratories, because now the laboratories, there are so many people who are now and continue to be in need of some tests, but they can't access to it, including areas like Miania, like Nizi, like the health zone of Nyakunde, where the need still continue, even if in Bunia the situation is still stable, with the National Biologic Institute, which is now established here in this hospital and in others area where they have the capacity. Another problem is the access on beds, because until now the capacity is 500 beds for people who are suspicious and confirmed case in this province of Ituri, and the number is very less, and it still continue to high and to add other bed to make sure that other people will have the same security, the same health assistance. Ebola Treatment Center is also one of other needs in so many areas. Last time we were in the area of Nizi, where people are in need of an Ebola treatment center because there are so many cases, but until now it's not operational yet, and this is making population to suffer and contamination to continue in communities. On the area of community, you have to know that until now there are so many people who are not believing on the existence of this disease of Ebola until now. So many members of the community are not believing on the existence of this, and there are so many people who are thinking about which and or other things which are making this situation. There are also other problems. There are also other problems like founding of local NGOs and local community organizers which could educating people, but which until now doesn't have any money and any way to get money and to get support from international NGO and international system to get access. And you have NGOs which international NGOs which are working on stabilizing the disease, but it's only members of the community who could stop the spread of this Budibudio outbreak, because they know people and they know how to speak to them. This is one of the biggest challenge here in Ituri. There is some announcement. The Ministry of Health here in Democratic Republic of the Congo, Roger Nkamba, who said that health in any case will be free for everybody, but until now it's not in fact and on the ground implemented yet. Another thing is about paying people who are working, volunteers who are working on the response and on stopping this outbreak. Until now we are at 53 days, and until now they are not paid yet. They are still waiting for their money, and they are organizing some strike to try to make the situation more known by media and by other actors, to make sure that they will be paid their money and they will get what they really need. Population is affected on the way that the Ebola is continuing to grow in the community, and there are cases who are coming. Until now, according to the government, there is now more than 600 people who are in Ebola treatment center like this one behind me, and there is more than 500 persons who died from this disease, but the number could be more because there are so many areas where laboratories are not working, and it's impossible and difficult to confirm if those persons died from the Ebola disease or not, and it only confirmed cases which are putting inside the data the government is publishing. And another thing is that until now the cases of confirmed Ebola people, it's now reached more than 1,050 cases in the province of Ituri, of North Kivu and South Kivu, here in the east of Democratic Republic of the Congo.
And now to our dispatches. Burkina Faso ends military ties with France. Burkina Faso has continued on its shift from foreign policies by ending key military cooperations with France. The decision reflects the country's determination to pursue its own security strategy and strengthen partnership it believes better serves the national interest. This is another sign of changing political landscape across the Sahel.
Récemment, effectivement, on a vu le gouvernement burkinabé qui a rompu les relations diplomatiques avec la République française. Cela, c'est un long processus qui a commencé depuis longtemps, parce que depuis l'avènement du terrorisme au Sahel, on a constaté que la France jouait un double jeu. Elle n'était pas honnête avec nos gouvernements pour lutter contre le terrorisme. Donc, à l'avènement du capitaine Ibrahim Traoré, il a entrepris des réformes pour demander à l'armée française de quitter le territoire burkinabé, ce qui a été fait. Et une fois que l'armée française a quitté le sol burkinabé, leur intention c'était de revenir, mais sous forme de façon voilée, en soutenant les actions des groupes armés terroristes, notamment au Sahel, mais aussi en passant par des associations, des structures, des ONG pour financer leurs agissements sur le terrain. Donc ces structures étaient des proxys qui intervenaient au profit et au compte de la République française. Ce qui va amener, suite au renseignement, ce qui amène le Burkina Faso d'abord à interpeller certains diplomates français sur le sol burkinabé pour leur faire savoir que le gouvernement burkinabé est au courant de leurs actions subversives. Et après maintes réflexions et observations, on s'est rendu compte que ces actions subversives continuaient toujours de la part de la France, ce qui a amené le gouvernement burkinabé à rompre définitivement les relations diplomatiques avec la France. Donc cela se justifie par le jeu subversif de la France qui soutient les groupes armés terroristes en termes de formation, en termes de logistique et en termes de financement. Donc, au regard de tout ça, le gouvernement ne pouvait pas rester les bras croisés, ce qui a entraîné cette décision. Et je vous rappelle aussi que l'eurodéputé qui a proposé une motion à l'Assemblée de l'Union européenne, c'est un Français. C'est un général français qui a porté cette motion à l'Union européenne. Donc, tous ces éléments réunis nous confortent que la France soutient effectivement les groupes armés terroristes au Sahel. Elle se cache derrière les questions de droits humains, de la démocratie, du droit de la liberté d'expression et autres. Mais en réalité, ils ont un programme bien ficelé. Le soutien de la France aux groupes armés terroristes n'a pas commencé par le Burkina, ça a commencé depuis le Mali. L'opération Barkhane, Takuba, etc. Ce sont des opérations qui ont été menées par l'armée française au Mali. Elle avait une base au Burkina Faso et à partir de là, elle intervenait au Mali. Mais on s'est rendu compte qu'au Mali, la France s'est interposée, ne luttait pas contre les terroristes. Au contraire, elle les protégeait de l'armée malienne. Et une fois que l'armée malienne a pris ses responsabilités à travers le colonel Assimi Goïta, ils ont effectivement demandé aux Français de quitter le territoire malien. Et ça, les Français n'ont pas digéré cette action. Donc, ils vont commencer à soutenir les groupes armés de façon ouverte. Je vous rappelle que l'ambassadeur de l'Ukraine au Sénégal a dit ouvertement que l'Ukraine soutient les groupes armés terroristes au Sahel à travers, en collaboration avec les Français. Un général qui est du renseignement français a clairement dit dans les médias français qu'il fallait trouver une manière subversive pour que la France revienne, mais en étant invisible. C'est-à-dire qu'elle ne va plus agir à travers son armée directement, mais elle va passer par ces groupes armés qui vont agir sur le terrain. Donc il y a plusieurs éléments qui montrent que l'armée française effectivement soutient ces groupes armés terroristes à travers le financement, car c'est la France qui produit le franc CFA. Et la monnaie est utilisée dans notre zone. Et on retrouve fréquemment chez les terroristes des liasses de billets qui sont nouvelles, c'est-à-dire qui n'ont pas été utilisées par quelqu'un, qui proviennent directement d'une source. Donc ça, ce sont des éléments qui prouvent que la France soutient ces groupes armés terroristes. On a également trouvé des types d'armement et des moyens logistiques tels que les drones. Nous savons très bien que les terroristes ne fabriquent pas des drones. Et la vente de ces appareils dans notre espace, notamment au Burkina Faso, est très réglementée. Donc, un individu ne peut pas se lever et se procurer un drone. Mais comment se fait-il que ces groupes armés terroristes utilisent ces drones qui n'ont pas la connaissance technique pour les manipuler et qui les manipulent certainement, qui ont reçu une formation de la part de l'armée française qui agit dans l'ombre. Et au Mali, il y a un agent de renseignement français qui a été arrêté au Mali. Et au départ, la République française a annoncé que c'était un simple citoyen français. Mais par la suite, ils ont reconnu que c'était un agent de renseignement qui agissaient auprès des terroristes au compte de la République française. Donc tous ces éléments réunis nous prouvent que la France apporte un soutien logistique, un soutien financier et la formation aux groupes armés terroristes. C'est ce qui a amené le gouvernement à prendre cette décision courageuse en rompant les relations diplomatiques avec ce pays.
Historic participation from African teams. Nevertheless, disappointing, but historic to the fact that we had several teams qualifying for the round of 32. Many teams out of the eight, at least eight teams qualified. Senegal was in, Ivory Coast, Congo, Ghana, South Africa, Algeria, Cape Verde. And Cape Verde did very well, putting a lot of pressure to Senegal. And it has been one of the most outstanding, I think, story for this World Cup. Beyond the many chaos that we saw, Cape Verde has not only represented Africa very well, it is a major story for the entire World Cup globally. And it has been disappointing in the sense of how our African teams lost. For example, you have the South Africa game, losing the game at 91 minutes. You have Ivory Coast at the 86th minute. You have Congo at the 86th minute. You have Senegal during the extra time, 106 minutes. You have Cape Verde at 111 extra time minutes. And then you have the recent, which I think we shall also discuss, is the Egypt-Argentina game that ended 3-2 in the 92nd. Argentina scoring in the 92nd minute. So Egypt was leading this game 2-0. And so it was going to be a very historic game had they won. We'll have a team from the continent going to the quarterfinals. Now, based on these results, we now have only one team participating for the quarterfinals, and that is Morocco, that qualified yesterday. But yes, all African teams are out, but I think they made a mark to reaching out to the round of 32 stage, which in itself is critical, and many teams did. And there are many reasons as to why we lost these games. It has been, some of the games have been attributed to tactics and that were used. It was very disappointing to see the Senegal game, how it ended, and some of their own players were unhappy based on what transpired in terms of the tactical shift. The other issue has been why are we losing these games late towards the end, from 85th minute toward the end. It's a 90-game minute, and we are not able to defend or employ our tactics within just 5 minutes. This, of course, being disappointing. I don't want it to feed into the racist rhetoric that we have seen that African teams lack concentration towards the end. The issue of refereeing, and it's a major issue for how the game for Argentina and Egypt ended. As I said, that game was 2-0 up for Egypt. There are calls that have been termed controversial, especially on fouls, and could have played part on why Argentina won that game. Not to take anything from them, that is some of the issues that have transpired. It's a controversial game in that sense. Infantino, the FIFA boss, came out saying that was not his decision, but the independent bodies within FIFA for refereeing made that decision, which many people don't believe. Don't he didn't have any involvement to that. And so it sets a dangerous precedent for the World Cup, because that decision is not consistent with other games that we have seen. We have not seen any decision made so far within the World Cup in regard to reversing decisions that were made within the field. And it tells a lot because we have seen issues that have transpired since the start of this World Cup. We have seen teams that have been harassed, like Iran, that have been harassed within the United States, but United States itself. And FIFA did very little to protect a team like Iran. Teams like Senegal, teams from the African continent were subjected to searches and everything. All this does not make a conducive environment for a team to go and play, relax, and then come back to win matches. It creates very difficult conditions, especially for a team like Iran, which did very well without losing many games to this World Cup. They stood a huge chance, actually, of qualifying.
And now to our word of the day segment. Our word of the day is flood. Flooding happens when water covers land that is usually dry. Across Africa, flood has become more frequent and more destructive, affecting homes, schools, farms, and the entire communities. While heavy rainfall is a natural cause, poor drainage, rapid urbanization, and climate change have made the impact even worse.
Hello everyone, I am Fauzia Zila Seidu and welcome to another edition of Word of the Day on Africa Speaks. I'm always excited to bring you a word in which we understand our own world. Well, our word for today is flood. It is a word millions across Africa understand, not only from the dictionary, but from painful recurring experiences. From the neighborhoods of Accra and Lagos to the informal settlements of Nairobi and the river valleys of Mozambique, we share this reality. In simple terms, a flood is water going beyond its proper place. But today, when we hear the word flood, we often think all of the skies. We say, this rain caused the flood. That is partly true, but it is far from the whole truth. Rain is natural, flooding is political. Let's think about it this way. If you pour water into clean open gutters, the water moves. But if the gutter is choked with plastic, sand, and poorly managed waste, the same water rises and enters people's homes. The problem is not the rain. The problem is the system that failed to account for the people. Across Africa, flood exposed a deep systematic crisis. They reveal how our cities are planned or left unplanned. They reveal where our people are structurally forced to live, whether our infrastructures is maintained, and whether public safety is treated as a fundamental right or an afterthought. In many African cities, flooding has become a seasonal tragedy. Every rainy season, the same warning echoes. Low-lying, underfunded areas are submerged. Families are displaced. Working class lives are lost. Then, after a few days of public anger, leadership moves on until the next rain comes. But a flood should not only make us ask, how heavy was the rain? It must compel us to ask harder questions. Who planned these cities? Who profit from unregulated constructions on our wetlands? Why are the majority, the working class and peasantry, always the ones who pay the heaviest price? This is where the word flood becomes inherently political, because it concerns power, resource distribution, and neocolonial priorities. When we fail to build resilient infrastructure for all citizens, we allowed weather to dictate who survives. Understanding worlds is the first step towards understanding the world, and when Africans understand the forces shaping our lives, we are better equipped to shape our own future. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep building a united Africa. I am Fauzia Zila Seidu, and flood has been the word of the week. See you same time next week.
And as always, we end with history. This week, we remember the anniversary of Swaziland uprising. Thousands of citizens took to the street demanding democratic reforms, greater political freedoms, and improved living conditions. The demonstration reflected a broader struggle of participation, accountability, and the right of people to have a greater voice in how they are governed. Although the challenges remain, the uprising has become an important chapter in the country's political history, a reminder that calls for justice often comes for ordinary people determined to shape their own future.
In the last week of June 2021, the streets of Swaziland erupted in protest as the country's absolute monarchy faced an existential challenge. Thousands left their homes, schools, and offices, demanding democratic reforms, greater political freedoms, and an end to absolute monarchy. The tension had been building up for weeks. In early May, Fabani Nkomyi, a 25-year-old law student, was killed, reportedly by the police. A few weeks later, a student leader was kidnapped. In June, demonstrators in villages and cities marched to the offices of their MPs and submitted petitions demanding an end to absolute monarchy, a people's government, and a multi-party democracy. King Swazi's government responded by imposing a ban on demonstrations. King Swazi III was the major target of popular anger. His predecessor, Sobhuza II, had repealed the constitution and dissolved parliament, replacing the multi-party system with a traditional royal order called the Tinkunla system, whereby the royal king and his royalists exercised complete control over the levers of power. In the 21st century, Swazi III continued on this despotic path. He also accumulated a great deal of wealth and spent this money lavishly, with billions of dollars spent on jets, cars, and parties. Meanwhile, a large section of the population faced unemployment, poverty, and limited opportunities. This combination of royal arrogance, crackdown on democracy, attack on protesters, and poor economic opportunities was waiting to explode. Towards the end of June, the people decisively took matters into their hands. Despite Swazi's ban on protests only intensified. Parties like Budemo and the Communist Party of Swaziland, trade unions like Tukosa, and organizations like the Swaziland National Union of Students led the uprising. The protests were especially unique because, for the first time, they were not confined to the urban areas and spread like wildfire to the villages. By June 28th and 29th, the situation hung in balance. Reports emerged of Swazi fleeing the country. He also ordered the army out on the street and demanded that the protest be crushed. The repression on the protesters saw them respond by targeting properties belonging to the royal family. Security forces shot en masse at protesters, wounding hundreds. By the first week of July, at least 70 people had been killed, according to some estimate. Soldiers broke into people's homes, assaulting and arresting protesters and committing human rights violations. All this repression did not stop the protests. They continued in the following month and in the following years, braving repression and state violence. More than 5 years later, the question raised in 2021 remain unresolved. Many Swazis continue to call for political reforms, freedom of expression, and greater control over the decisions that shape their lives. The anniversary of the uprising is therefore not only a remembrance of those who lost their lives, but also a reflection on the unfinished journey towards democracy. For the people of Swaziland and the movements that lead them, the message of 2021 remain clear. Independence is not only about freedom from colonial rule. It is also about the right of citizens to participate fully in shaping their political, economic, and social future.
And that brings us to the end of this week's Africa Speak. Tonight, we examined the political tension in Tanzania, the humanitarian crisis in Sudan, the conflict in DR Congo, developments in Burkina Faso and Kenya, reflected on the growing challenges of flooding, and remembered Swaziland uprising. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay informed, and remember that lasting change begins when people refuse to remain silent. Because Africa must speak, Africa must be heard. I am Rashida Abubakar. Have a lovely evening.